Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a really fascinating piece of 8th grade curriculum today. And it's not just your standard memorize these facts and regurgitate them kind of lesson. No, this actually teaches students how to step right into the workshop. The lesson is called Precision in Inquiry, Forging Your Research Question. And honestly, it uses this absolutely brilliant metaphor throughout the whole thing. It treats the student's mind like a blacksmith's forge. The basic premise? Raw curiosity is great, it really is, but to make something truly remarkable, you've got to have the right tools to hammer it out.
So the curriculum hooks you right out of the gate with a powerful visual, pulling from Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Think about a chunk of iron straight out of the earth. In its raw form, it's just heavy, clunky, and pretty dull. If you tried to, say, cut a thick rope with it, you'd just make a mess, right? Well, the lesson argues that an unrefined question operates the exact same way. It's practically useless for the heavy lifting of real research until you apply some serious friction, heat, and skill to finally give it a sharp edge.
Okay, let's look at the blueprint for today's Forge. We'll be covering 5 main areas. First, the power of refining. Second, why sharpening matters. Third, how to focus your question. Fourth, refining in action. And finally, morality, mind, and mastery.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the power of refining.
Now, before anyone starts swinging a hammer, the lesson defines the raw material we're actually working with. It points out that a stellar research project almost never starts out with a perfect question. Usually, it just starts with a hunch, or maybe a super messy, broad topic. But from there, it has to evolve into a refined research question. That's defined here as a precise, focused inquiry that transforms from a rough idea into a sharp, powerful tool designed for a very specific job. The big takeaway for the students is that brilliant research isn't born perfect. It's carefully crafted by striking away all the unnecessary bits until it can cut right through the noise.
Moving on to Section 2, why sharpening matters.
It's totally natural for a student to wonder, why shouldn't I just swing a giant, blunt hammer at a massive tree of information? Why do I need to be so precise? Well, the contrast in stress levels and actual effectiveness is just massive. When your topic is too broad, you end up wandering into completely unrelated territory. You're chasing too much information, which is exhausting, and it just spreads you way too thin. But, and this is the key, when you narrow the topic, you stay right on track. You can dig incredibly deep and achieve super clear results. The curriculum makes it a point to show that this kind of sharp focus doesn't just help you ace a class, it brings clarity to your future workplace and even your ministry.
All right, Section 3, how to focus your question. So, how do we actually craft this academic blade? The curriculum gives the students 3 really practical steps to master. Step 1, focus the idea. Instead of trying to boil the ocean with some massive query like, how does technology affect society, focus it down to one specific group, time, or effect. Like maybe look specifically at how smartphone use has changed teenage communication over the last 5 years. See the difference? Step 2 is seeking feedback. Go talk to a teacher or a peer. Let them spot the gaps or the unnecessary complexities in your idea. And finally, Step 3 is checking resources. A sharp question is totally useless if you can't actually find the answers. Students have to make sure the data and interviews they need are genuinely accessible within their time limits.
Which brings us to Section 4, refining in action.
Let's step into the showroom and look at some before and after examples to really see this transformation. Take a massive global issue like, how does pollution affect the environment? It's way too big, but narrow it down to, how does plastic waste affect fish in the Gulf Coast? Wow, suddenly you've focused the location and the subject instantly. Or, instead of tackling a monster question like whether sports affect students' grades and their mental health, the lesson shows how simplifying it to just mental health gives you a much more measurable outcome. And that third example perfectly hits on the resource check we just talked about. If a student wants to study polar bears and climate change globally, they're going to hit a wall with data. But by zooming in on how warming temperatures affect polar bear migration specifically in Alaska, boom, they found a region where solid research is actually accessible to them. To really hammer this home, the lesson leaves the 8th graders with a homework challenge where they take the tools into their own hands. First, they have to refine the super broad idea of music influence. Then, they need to explain exactly why broad questions are so risky. Third, they've got to take a massive question about European tourism and simplify it down to just one manageable element. Next, they give a real-world example of a resource limitation. And finally, the ultimate test. Forge a brand new, sharply refined question about a specific problem right in their own local community. Pretty cool, right? And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, Morality, Mind, and Mastery.
Before wrapping up, the curriculum takes a step back to look at the big picture. It introduces the Academy philosophy, which directly ties biblical morality right into the student's education. It poses a really critical question here. What good is a razor-sharp tool if it ends up in the wrong hands, or if it's guided by the wrong heart? It argues that education without a moral compass is fundamentally harmful. Think about it. There's really no point in being incredibly smart or mastering research if you just continue to make choices that damage yourself or the people around you.
To anchor this newly sharpened mind in truth, the text points directly to Romans 8:6-7. It highlights what it calls a promise of peace of mind to everyone who stays spiritually grounded. This is framed as the absolute ultimate experience of mastery for the students. In this philosophy, an education that's guided by strong moral choices does more than just give you knowledge, it gives you peace. It literally challenges these 8th graders to view their intellect as a tool meant to heal the world, not harm it.
So as we close out this explainer, it's just really fascinating to see how this curriculum takes rough, unformed ideas and strikes them against the anvil of feedback, focus, and resourcefulness. It gives us a unique lens into how you compare hard academic skills with a very specific moral framework. And it leaves the students, and honestly us too, with a pretty powerful final thought. When you have the tools to shape a razor-sharp intellect, what will you build with your newly sharpened mind?